Back in 1998, Konami released a video game that is widely regarded as one of the greatest of all time. IGN reviewed it as being closer to perfection than any other game, beautiful, engrossing, and innovative in every conceivable category, and has received such acclaim as being a game that felt like a big budget action blockbuster movie, only better. This brilliant and technically stunning game popularized the stealth genre, shipped over 12 million demos, and sold over 7 million copies worldwide. That game is Metal Gear Solid. The year is 1998. Saving Private Ryan is battling out for the #1 film title along with Armageddon. Hair gel becomes an interesting topic of conversation thanks to the hit movie There's Something About Mary. Pixar released its second animated film with A Bug's Life. France won their first World Cup title, beating Brazil thanks to 2 goals from Zinedine Zidane. The Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl over the Green Bay Packers at Qualcomm Stadium in California, and the Chicago Bulls won their second three-peat of the decade by beating the Utah Jazz 4-2, Michael Jordan also taking home his 6th and last Finals MVP award. The top music at the time contained a variety of now classic songs from artists like Shania Twain, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Five, Savage Garden, Elton John, Destiny's Child, Will Smith, Celine Dion, Third Eye Blind, The Verve, Busta Rhymes, Spice Girls, Madonna, Boyz II Men, and Aerosmith. 1998 was also, of course, the year Konami released Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1. But did you know its release was delayed by over a year? Supposed to be on a completely different platform, and wasn't even close to being the first game in the Metal Gear franchise? My name is Mingus, and in 1998 I was a 12-year-old gaming on a PlayStation after school every single day. But I never played Metal Gear Solid. And being so highly regarded, it was an easy choice to be the first playthrough for my new Bucketlist Gaming channel. So let's talk about the development of Metal Gear Solid, its characters and story, as well as my thoughts after experiencing this game for the very first time. If you do enjoy this video, please consider leaving a thumbs up and let me know what other must-play games make your bucket list in the comments below. For this video, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole to learn that this was actually the third game of the franchise developed by the legendary Hideo Kojima. The original Metal Gear game was released in July 1987 and only developed for a console known as the MSX2. The MSX2 wasn't popularized or even really well known at the time outside of Japan and some parts of Europe in the mid to late 80s. But as you can see here, it's kind of like a home computer video game console, which was integrated with its own inbuilt keyboard and gamepad. This first Metal Gear game was eventually reworked a few months later for release on Nintendo's NES. But this was developed without Kojima's involvement and was drastically different to the original. But the official Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake was developed and released again on the MSX2 platform in 1990. Over the years, there's been several re-releases, prequels, and sequel games, often for platforms like the PSP and Game Boy, which have added to the plot and characters of the Metal Gear series, but aren't considered major titles. Now for this third game that we're talking about, the reason they called Metal Gear Solid not only comes from its main character Solid Snake, but was also to represent the fact that this game had transitioned from the previous 2D platform titles into the 3D world, making players able to control the game from overhead, but also seamlessly transition to first person on the fly to make it feel as though you were really immersed into the game itself. Hideo Kojima was originally planning for this game's development on another obscure platform, the 3DO. Learning this information took me down yet another rabbit hole, finding that 3DO was a company founded by eventual Electronic Arts founder Trip Hawkins. The 3DO company didn't actually manufacture a console product, but was selling its design and architecture to companies in exchange for a very low royalty fee on game sales in comparison to companies like Nintendo. This made the product very appealing initially, and some of the companies set to utilize the technology included Sony and Sega before concentrating on developing their own products, Samsung, Toshiba, and AT&T. Panasonic did launch its own 3DO console product in 1993, but with a retail price at almost $700, it was rendered extremely unpopular and a huge flop, and the 3DO disappeared from the market. So with 3DO no longer in existence and Kojima's other prominent game, Policenauts, being completed in 1994 on MSX2, attention was turned to developing the new Metal Gear game. The original working title was Metal Gear 3, but it was decided that the name be changed for its overseas release since the Metal Gear franchise was not well known at the time outside of Japan. Hideo Kojima has noted that there were several Hollywood films which were sources of inspiration for the storyline and gameplay of the Metal Gear franchise, with James Bond being the series that inspired him most for Metal Gear Solid. In this game, you control Solid Snake, a soldier who has to infiltrate a nuclear weapons facility to neutralize a growing terrorist threat from the evil Foxhound unit. Taking place in an alternate history where the Cold War continued into the late 1990s, our main character and protagonist, Solid Snake, is a legendary infiltrator and hero of war whose reputation often precedes him. Kojima has said the overall message of this game was dealing with genetics and the moral implication of genetic engineering. This game lets you play to missions in a variety of different ways, such as being stealth, you can be tactical, you can focus on the objectives, or you can go loud and take down as many enemies as you can handle while trying to achieve your goal. The ability to utilize a variety of equipment you find during play and hide away from enemies when things get too hot means that it's very easy to mix up both styles, leading to so many different ways that you can complete this game's missions. So quickly going back to previous games, despite Metal Gear being released almost exclusively in Japan, Solid Snake resembles a young Mel Gibson, but the character model was altered in re-released versions. On the cover illustration of that game, Snake is said to resemble actor Michael Biehn as Kyle Reese in 1984's Terminator. Although this was not officially confirmed, it's been said that this likely helped Konami attract fans to Metal Gear, building a foundation for the franchise's future success. When it comes to Metal Gear Solid, designer Yoji Shinkawa says Snake's facial appearance was based on Christopher Walken, and his physical build was based on a popular action superstar of the time, Jean-Claude Van Damme. According to Kojima, Snake's character model was also specifically designed to have a well-sculpted buttocks, as the player spends the majority of the game staring at the character's back from a third-person view. But whether or not this is consistent with Jean-Claude Van Damme's behind, I'll leave that up to you. Snake is voiced by David Hayter, an actor, director, and producer who later wrote the screenplay for the 2000 movie X-Men. Interestingly, Hayter is the only voice actor in this game credited with his real name. The remainder of the character actors were initially only credited using pseudonyms, until the game was remade in 2004. This was due to the fact that at that time, the Screen Actors Guild's rules regards to actors' performances for video games was unclear, and thus it was just probably easier to hide their identities. Metal Gear Solid is now over a quarter of a century old, and like most old titles, it can be hard to appreciate the graphic quality if you weren't around playing video games 25 years ago. For me, it looks very graphically detailed in comparison to a lot of other games released around that time. But probably the most impressive aspect of this game is its immersion. Apparently this game is well known for its genius ways of breaking the fourth wall between player and game. In simple terms, that's the imaginary wall that separates the story from the real world. In Metal Gear Solid, there's one mission in particular that you're in battle against bad guy Psycho Mantis, whose powers involve telepathic and psychokinetic tricks. Mid-fight, he actually reads back to you items from other games stored in your memory card, he can take over your controller and messes with your screen to pretend it's turned off. One of the tricks to beating him is to switch your controller into the second port of the console, which makes for an amazing and very memorable moment in all of my gaming experience. If it wasn't for people in chat helping me on stream, I could have been fighting Psycho Mantis to this day. So if you do want to help me out on a ton of other games, you can find links to my Twitch page in the description below. I have to admit there were many missions that took longer than I expected and found quite challenging. Metal Gear is definitely not a kid's game, and you can easily get lost in the details or the time it takes you to retrace your steps through the missions to get to the next boss. In fact, just like many older games, there is a ton of Easter eggs and hidden features built into Metal Gear Solid. I can just imagine my younger self sitting back with an old school cheat book or a guide and going through to test each one of them out if I had played this game upon first release. In my opinion, it's things like that that gives games so much personality and makes them so memorable for the people playing them. There is so much to talk about with others who have played the game, and whilst trying to explain it to people who haven't played can be overwhelming, it's exactly how a game title gains a strong reputation and loyal fan base. At Metal Gear Solid's time of release, there was some criticism about the extensive use of cutscenes and cinematics, and that you could almost spend more time watching than you could actually playing the game. I think this is just a matter of personal preference for what you think makes a fun game as an individual. For me, I struggled to keep up with the minor details of the storyline, but I'm not against it. I felt like I was involved in a movie. I felt very entertained. And some of the scenes were amazing, despite some very cringeworthy lines. Some of that might be down to issues in translation. Apparently the English version of the game added a lot of Western sources and authors to the pool of motivational quotes that were originally Chinese proverb, and then explained in Japanese. Nevertheless, I think the game holds up really well, and the overall storyline and message of the game is one which still provokes thought to this day. Metal Gear Solid leaves a legacy of being the first of the stealth genre to become mainstream, pioneered the integration of cinematic techniques into video games, and inspired the next generation of game developers in games like Far Cry, Splinter Cell, Gears of War, and The Last of Us. Metal Gear Solid was very immersive, gripping, and I felt it was both challenging yet fun to play, even for me playing for the first time in 2024. But what do you think? Was Metal Gear Solid a good game? Is it true it was one of the best and most revolutionary games of all time? And what other must-play games make your gaming bucket list? Once again, my name is Mingus, and I want to thank you so much for watching this video. It took a lot of work, so I really hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you back for the next video on Bucketlist Gaming.